Having storms here in beautiful Florida. So if for some reason the phone goes blank and the screen goes dead, and that's because my power might have got knocked out. Only bad part about living in Florida in the rainy season. All right. Today we're going to go over quite a few things, and it's basically how to create a fun, informative NLP or hypnosis training people will remember and use. It's the difference that makes the difference. I know we got a lot of people on the call, a bunch of my trainers and other people. And this is, if you're already an NLP trainer or training, you're going to get some information today that you can use on how to sell what you do. So let's type "let's rock" in our little suggestion box so we can get going in the question box. Good. All right. Here we go. What would happen if you could become the type of trainer people love because you're fun, entertaining, and useful? What separates those of you who go to a lot of conferences? I know we got people on the call. I see it. A lot of the conferences, NGH, IAC, other conferences. And you think about the people that get the good turnouts in the trainings and things like that, even at a conference. Well, they're fun, entertaining, but they're also very useful, it seems like, right? Well, let's get started with it's no secret, right? And it's no secret that most trainers don't do well. And there's a lot of reasons for that. They lose their audience when they first get started. And it's not due to nerves. People think, oh, it's because they're nervous. Well, an audience actually wants the speaker to do well. And if you're a little bit nervous, a lot of times that actually gets more rapport with an audience than being too calm and too laid back sometimes, right? But they lose their audience in different ways. And that causes them to fail to connect. There's a lot of ways that you can fail to connect. Again, being arrogant, being other things, but you just fail to connect with the audience. And a lot of that has to do with not knowing your audience, right? And then because of that, they can't transfer the information. Most of us want to give a talk or a speech or workshop or seminar or a training because we're trying to transfer some kind of information. But if the information is not transferred to the people taking it in such a way that they begin to useless, well, it might have been a couple of fun minutes, fun hours, maybe a few fun days, but it didn't really transform their lives, and they weren't able to use that information. And a lot of that's because they do not know how to teach to multiple levels of consciousness, right? They're teaching to the conscious level. And again, for us, hypnotists, NLPers, we should be the masters at the opposite. We should be teaching to multiple levels all the time, right? And here's what's commonly tried out there. People doing information overload, right? Which, going back to information overload, usually it's people trying to appear smart, give way too much information. Now, giving over information is a good thing. I always suggest you over-deliver, under-promise, over-deliver. But if you give too much information in such a way they can't use it, you end up going, I can't do this, right? And there's a lot of things going on with that. I just started taking some classes on the computer again and internet marketing and how to do things differently. And one of the trainings I signed up for, they gave so much information, but I have to back up and go learn a lot before I can even do what they're talking about because I couldn't do what they were talking about, right? So it was like I got frustrated and quit. And I see that in the hypnosis and the NLP community, right? And again, people commonly try telling jokes, right? Telling jokes is horrible. Making your audience laugh is golden, but telling jokes is horrible, right? So you don't want to tell jokes. Usually what also happens, people model other speakers or trainers incorrectly. They use our modeling, whether the new behavior generator or other modeling techniques, but they're not doing it in a way that makes it as effective and applicable as possible. Maybe they use too much jargon speak at the beginning of a training because, again, they're not in the field that you're talking about. So do they even know what the jargon you're talking about? If they don't, you're going to lose them, right? Or they begin to use canned approaches. Now, this doesn't mean you don't script out what you're going to say or practice it. It's just it's too cookie cutter. And then it loses its appeal. And here's why it didn't work. people start by being too complex. That's the information overload. And a lot of that's because they want to appear smart. I have to be smart. I want to appear smarter than my audience, right? So they keep it too complex. True genius is taking complex ideas and making them simple. The incorrect use of humor. This is, again, telling a joke as opposed to telling a story. People love stories, especially self-effacing stories, but, a joke can offend. But if you tell it in a story format, people aren't offended, right? So it's the incorrect use of humor. Also, not knowing your audience, so you might use humor that you think is funny, but it depends on your audience. You're going to lose them. And again, the other thing is not understanding modeling. They pick a model that won't work for them, or they're applying it in such a way it won't work. And again, not understanding conscious and subconscious teaching, how you're teaching consciously and what you're trying to teach subconsciously. Very few people even touch on this. I've only actually started doing this heavily in the last few years in my trainer's training, right? Because if you understand this and you can actually use what you're teaching consciously to impact what they're learning subconsciously, and maybe teaching something subconsciously that makes the conscious learning easier, not more difficult, right? And so that's the key, is understanding the split levels that you're teaching to at any given time. And again, this has to do with not using NLP to teach. They're teaching about NLP, but they're not using the NLP to teach. Same with hypnosis. They're teaching about hypnosis, but they're not using the hypnotic techniques like waking hypnosis, which ties in with the NLP to actually teach the material that you want to teach, right? And here's what you need to do in 4 steps, basically. If you want to be a more effective trainer, understand the process. Understand conscious and subconscious teaching. You have to know what you're teaching consciously and also develop a skill set so you know what you're teaching subconsciously. So you're delivering multiple levels of conscious teaching. Understand the difference between a seminar, speech, workshop, and boot camp, because what you're presenting in each one of these is different, right? Still, it's conscious, subconscious teaching, but it's a different setup, and very few people even touch on this. They even approach it. So do you understand the difference between a seminar, speech, a workshop, or a boot camp, right? And then the correct use of modeling, right? So you pick a model that'll work for you and model it in the correct way so it works. And learn from theater, magicians, and movies. Because as a presenter, you've got to be entertaining, even as a teacher or any kind of change agent up there, to make it more impactful. So you need to learn from theater, magicians, movies. And I say magicians because that has to do with, I could put comics up there too, that has to do with timing, right? Learn from people that present consciously in different formats, right? And obviously I highlighted, get a good coach, right? And I'll go into why you may want to coach. I have a coach. I have a couple of different coaches. Met with one last weekend at a seminar. A lot of you on the call knows him, Elsom Eldridge. Has to do with getting an outside viewpoint. Step 1, conscious teaching. This is the easy part. You know what you want to teach consciously. If you're teaching hypnosis or NLP, or you're teaching a technique, right? Let's say NLP. So you're teaching the new behavior generator. Well, you're going to consciously teach the steps. It's the relax, theater of the mind, see the movie, all the little steps. That's conscious teaching. That part we understand, right? Even like in hypnosis, okay, not just teaching the skill set like an induction, but even something like the history of hypnosis, okay? So you understand the conscious teaching. But you need to understand what you're teaching subconsciously, because the belief sets the attitude, or belief sets an attitude, however you want to look at that, right? But, are you subconsciously setting a belief that makes the conscious teaching better, right? Let's say something like in hypnosis, the history of hypnosis. It's boring, it's this and that. But if you make it exciting, so this is really, you're setting the excitement level, because if you understand the concept of how important it is to know our history, to know where we're going into the future. So when you look at a braid, must be a very important name. The big thing at the National Guild is the Order of the Braid. Who was Braid? Why is this? And, so you're setting the attitude so it will enforce the conscious teaching, right? Because, again, your students are always modeling you, but also what attitude do you want your students to believe, to take in, and to do that? So you're teaching at different levels, right? One of the things I consciously and get through, I teach the steps, that's easy, but subconsciously I like to teach people the wonder of hypnosis, that it's fascinating. You get to deal with people and each person's slightly different, their trigger mechanisms, their submodalities. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. And that's the attitude I'm trying to set in subconsciously to make it fun. And also, to me, obviously, laughing and kidding around is fun. So I'm always trying to get that through. Step one, with that, you need to also begin to use NLP and hypnosis to teach NLP and hypnosis. Implement it, do it. That's where that the exercise I do, the witch's brew. Excuse me, I feel like Senator Rubio had to stop for a drink of water. But the witch's brew exercise is an NLP hypnosis technique to reinforce what we're teaching consciously, right? So you want to practice that to get it in, right? And again, you want to teach those multiple levels. Realize what you're teaching consciously and how you're subconsciously backing that up. So that's the first step you need to develop, right? Step two, the differences between a speech, between, that a speech, obviously, this is like a keynote speech, speaking at a symposium where it's a very short period of time, usually 45 minutes or less. It's a speech, right? That's what I would call a speech. Somebody hires you to be the keynote speaker. You're giving a speech. It's totally a one-way communication. Again, you want to do things consciously and subconsciously, but you want to break it down into what your speech is all about, right? A seminar. Now, seminar is usually a little bit longer, and it's a little more too active. This would be you're going to have more interaction with the audience. It could be from a couple hours to maybe a couple of days, but it's still mostly one-way teaching. They're not doing as much. They're listening. The first two speech seminars are listening modes, right? They're being imparted your wisdom, if you will. Then you have a workshop. This is where the people actually go and do something, right? They're doing exercises, they're doing techniques, they have workshop things to do. They're doing things, right? And again, a workshop can be from a couple hours to a few days, doesn't matter. But they have assignments that they're doing. This is what most people do. They teach a seminar or a workshop. This is where most people keep their learning skills, right? Is in the seminar or the workshop. And that's fine. And then the last is a boot camp. Now, boot camp takes a little bit of all of these. You're talking to them. You're presenting information. Obviously, they have a lot of things that they're going to do. The difference is, in a boot camp, you immerse yourself in the learning. Usually, you have to be away from home for this really to work, right? Because you're totally immersed in the learning, right? And it's a cool name because anyone on the call on this webinar, if you've ever had someone go to the military, right, and you see them leave, they leave, and then you see them come back from boot camp, are they a different person? Well, yeah, they've been totally immersed in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, whatever it is, for several weeks, right, if not a couple of months. And usually it spills right over into your advanced training. You're totally immersed in it, right? And you come out a different person. So if you're setting up, the best kind of learnings is a boot camp approach. And so, yeah, you're doing it's an all-day workshop, if you will, but are you doing things at night? And it doesn't necessarily, does it, have to be connected with what you're teaching at the workshop. I mean, those couple of you on the call know I do things with my groups like go to the movies at night. Why? Well, it gets them in a social environment, It's a different interaction. You can still teach. You can still teach in that environment, right? In fact, some of your best teaching may be in that environment, or you use where you go in that, whether it's dinner, or, down here in Florida, we always have dinner at least one night on the beach. There's a restaurant called Sharky's where you eat on the water. And we go there, and there's the interaction, and it's people watching. It's everything. It's part of the boot camp. And, we fly on the trapeze. God knows that's a boot camp thing, right? Put our hands in wolf traps, break boards, all of those things. It's the boot camp mentality to change and install all the things we're talking about. Step 3, this is the modeling. This is where a lot of people begin to make mistakes. First you have to pick a model that works for you, right? And you need to spend some time on this. Now, I'm always fascinated. These people tell me they want to be an elite trainer, and they may come to my trainers training, and I say, well, what trainers have you went to see? Oh, I don't. Okay, do you buy videos? No. Do you go to conferences and listen to speakers? No. I read a lot of books. Well, that's not the kind of model that will really work. If you're going to be picking books would be a way to model a writer, but it wouldn't be modeling somebody up on the stage giving a talk, right? So you need to pick a model that works for you, someone that you can relate to, someone that you can emulate, right? Again, as I always say, you don't want to know them personally necessarily, but you have to pick a model that works. Then a missing step is you have to customize that model to fit you, right? Right? So because you don't want to be a clone. The world does not need another Tony Robbins or a Zig Ziglar or Oprah Winfrey or anybody. It's not needed, right? I remember when I first got started in this, I'd been in it a while when Tony Robbins really hit big. And everywhere you went with a hypnosis or NLP, there were the guys, this was back a long time ago. They had the dark pinstripe suit, white shirt, red and white, reddish kind of tie, and suspenders. Everybody was going to be the next Tony Robbins. And I'd be at a conference or something, and everybody's going to tell me they're going to be the next Tony Robbins. Well, that's interesting. I've been hearing that for 20 years, haven't seen it yet. Why would there be a next one? Not that, you can't be the best you that you can be, but you don't want to be a clone, but you want to model the people that you admire and respect, but you want to make it uniquely yours, because every person has unique talents, abilities, and skills. The world needs what you have, not they got what Tony Robbins has. That's what Tony Robbins does, or Oprah, or when Zig Ziglar was alive, or whatever it is. So you want to use their skills and that, but you don't want to be a clone, right? And then with step 4, what you need to understand theater, and I spelled it theater, which is, and you see this in movies, you see it in books, you see it in everything, which is you need an opening, the body of what you're teaching, and a close. Now, those of us that teach multi-day seminars, right, 4 or 5 day seminars, or now mine's boot camps, right, still each section is an opening. You teach the stuff, and then it has a close, and then you move on, Kind of what we do in multi-day boot camps, or if you're doing workshops, it's more like a TV series. Each little section is self-contained. You can take that little section out, and as long as you understand some basics, you can watch that section, and it's complete in its own right. But even then, there's an overarching story, if you will, in it. So you need to understand how theater works, right? And when I teach a lot, I talk about musical theater, because they spend so much time on the opening number of a show, right? Why? Because if they don't hook you quick, it's over, right? Now, and look at how movies have changed in our current world, right? In the last couple of decades, movies can't start slowly. Usually they start with something that grabs you right out of the gate, right? Those of you who saw the last Star Trek movie, Trek, right? When it started with this big space battle again, and you had no idea who was what and what, blah, 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 and it was fascinating, right? And you were either hooked at the beginning or not, right? And a lot of this goes back, they say the movie that's really changed it was Star Wars, the original Star Wars, 1976 or 7. And, it started with that big thing going on, and we didn't know who any of these people were. But we need to think that way as a trainer, as a speaker, as a presenter. You need to understand the theatrical model. You need to watch comics for timing. Humor is all about timing. It's not about telling jokes. I haven't seen a comic tell a joke since Rodney Dangerfield. They tell stories. And, that's what you want to do, is the timing is everything. You can learn timing, but you have to watch it. You have to go and you have to become immersed in it a little bit. We're lucky. We have cable TV with Comedy Central, and, they always have these Friday nights, Saturday nights, Sunday nights. They'll have the comics on there, and you can watch them, right? And you pick up good stories that you can modify to fit your own life, because that's what makes it funny. The funny stories relate to you, right? Jeff Foxworthy with his whole "you might be a redneck if," he's telling stories. It's like, man, we all have relatives like that, if it's not us, right? So that's where you learn timing. Also, magicians have timing. It's all about the timing, because a true magician understands the presentation, Plus, they get into angle and direction, which I find fascinating. But, it's about timing. It's about pacing. It's about misdirection. And again, going back to conscious and subconscious learning, a lot of that's misdirection. I may be talking about one thing and I'm imparting something else. So it's kind of a magical misdirection. So, not that you have to really get into magic, but if possible, if you look at how magicians present information, it's fascinating, right? And also, magicians are, if you can add a little bit of magic to what you're teaching, card tricks, mentalism, things like that, audience, we love it. It also, if you're a really good teacher, you understand by doing these magic tricks, it puts because we teach adults, it throws adults back into the child mode. It's like an instant regression. Suddenly, they're young again, and they're like, ooh, yeah, in our group, we might get that 5 or 10% that want to know how the trick works, right? And I always say, well, come to my next seminar. But it's a regression. They're back in that childlike state, right? And then you can misdirect, right? You need to watch a lot of movies in theaters. If you're not a theater person, to go to plays. Plays are great too. In fact, as an actor, I would tell you go to plays. But what you want to go to movies for in a movie theater is you're a student of human behavior. You're now wanting to be a trainer and a speaker. That means you're going to do this in groups. Where are you watching group interaction, right? You need to watch it in the real world. So if you go to a movie, you can also, besides watching the movie, you can watch the audience. You can see what are they reacting to, how are they reacting to it. You can see what sucks some people in and what doesn't. You can see people, not get into it. But if you watch movies in theaters, you're watching the human interaction of basically a presentation. It's the movie. And you see the group dynamics. That's why you could see a movie in a theater and have a whole different response than watching it in your house, right? Plus, in your house, you may hit pause, got to answer the phone, go to the bathroom, things like that. In a theater, it's much more like what we do. It drives me crazy when I hear these people who want to be trainers, and I say, let's go to a movie. Oh, I don't like going to movies. Why? Well, it's too expensive. Oh, you don't want to shell out $9 for a movie, but you're going to ask people a couple of $1,000s to come to your training. Oh, okay, right? And where are you going to watch interactions of groups? It's also why you want to go to seminars. I should have added that, or conferences. Even if you just want to watch the audience and how do they relate to what the trainer's doing? What are they relating to? What works? What doesn't work? I'm always fascinated at like the National Guild of Hypnotists Convention or IAC that the trainers don't go watch the other trainers. not to necessarily steal, or as we'd say, model what they're doing, but what's working with the audience, what's not working with these audiences, right? It's fascinating, right? Because again, going back to comics, if you ever go to a comedy club where they have the 2 or 3 comics, usually 3, right? You'll always see the other comics watching the comic going on before them, right? Because they're watching what's working with the audience, what's not working with the audience. It's like, why would they not do this? Including the headliner, even a big name. The big name usually will come out and watch his warm-up act, at least the last half of it, to see what's happening, right? This is what we want to do. We want to become a hypnotist and NLP or psychologist that we are, change agents, if you will. We study humans one-on-one for changes, but now as this trainer, speaker, presenter, you got to do it in groups. So you want to begin to do these things, right? And this helps by going to movies, going to plays, maybe even watching comics, going to see comics. It develops your story skills, right? And also you can get ideas for stories that you can customize to yourself, right? And especially when you're starting out, because you think, I don't have any stories. But it gives you stories to start out with. And to get a good coach, why do you need a good coach? It's outside insight. It gives you things from the outside, right? And you can't judge a show from the inside. As an actor, I can tell you, especially a play, what we do is live performance, right? You can't be in the play and direct the play at the same time, right? You see actors do it in movies, but then they can stop, watch what they did, tweak it, this or that. We're doing a live performance, right? Plus, when you're in it, you can't judge what's happening. I always usually tell the story of, I was doing some seminars, stop smoking seminars. And, I had 2 stories I told at the end, and, I was working okay. And then I happened to be in Orlando, and one of my mentors, one of my coaches is there, Elsa Meldridge, and I invited him. He came and saw my show, my presentation, I call it a show, the seminar, and he liked it. He goes, but Will, what would happen if you flipped those last 2 stories? I'm like, well, what do you mean? And he told me his thought, and I'm like, I'll try it. Change the whole presentation, right? Gave it much more energy out the door. It works like magic. I've directed a lot of plays. I directed a couple plays last year, and a lot of I'm in a lot of plays. And usually the good directors, that week or 2 before you open, they bring in another director to watch their show, right? To just give outside ideas, fresh eyes, they call it. Put different eyeballs on the problem. There may not be a problem, and they may give some suggestions you don't want to take as a director. I had 3 different people come and see the last show I directed, Steel Magnolias, and out of the 10 or 12 ideas they gave me, I think I really used 2 or 3, but they gave me different insights. And it made me tweak, not complete changes, but because I was seeing the show every day and thinking about it, all the time and working with these actresses, I did not have that objective thing that I needed. And, the couple of people I had come in gave me some insight. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, and I used it. So you want to get a good coach, right, or a mentor if you don't already have one, right? And so they can in fact, I'm surprised, again, at these conferences, Guild, IACT, these conferences, people maybe going this Hypno Thoughts thing, coming, all these conferences out there, that if you're giving a talk, do you ask a couple of the other people, hey, would you do me a favor? Would you come watch my talk and give me some feedback? Real feedback, not like, oh, you were great, Again, if you want to use Anthony Robbins as a standard bearer, as a main speaker, he has people come in and critique a lot of his performances, and again, it's not we love you, it's you said too many times, you look more to the left, you look, your energy dropped, whatever. It's good outside coaching, right? If you're an elite performer, you should have an elite coach, right? So here's what I want you to have that we've went over today, is I want you to develop that conscious subconscious insight. That's what it's all about, right? And be good at all 4 levels: speech, seminar, workshop, and boot camp, right? And decide which one fits better where, right? And learn how to pick a good model or models. You may have more than one, right? And kind of customize them to make it yourself, right? Understand the theater model so you can begin to implement it in what you're teaching and training. And understand that this kind of, a lot of what happens in movies and TV and that ripples back through the whole culture. It's why, you got to do things faster out of the gate. You can't, start as slow as we used to, right? So this is why now I'm introducing NLP boot camps. And all my trainers, I'm suggesting they go more to a boot camp modality. How to set up a boot camp, how to do a more interactive, right? So you can change how they're thinking, And I believe these are the best courses on NLP anywhere because it's different than anything else we've had available because of the experience I have in doing this for 25 years, trying the different models, what works, what doesn't work, things like that, right? And of course, if you don't have this kind of course, you'll never really excel in NLP or hypnosis, right? Anybody can join the Navy. Very few people can become a Navy SEAL, right? And boy, if anybody's been through Spec Ops training, SEALs, Rangers, Recon, it's all immersion, right? You want to immerse yourself in this, and you can get started too soon. I'm doing basic NLP, as all of you know, right? My next one is June 1st through the 4th down here in beautiful Venice, Florida. It's usually $19.95. It comes with a home study course, which is a $700 value. It has a coaching session included, if not two, at least $250. I'm giving a free course, which I'll reveal to the people that sign up for it, right? And if they already have the one free course, they'll get another one, probably worth about that much. So that's a value of $34.42, right? And so I'm charging $9.95 for my boot camp because I want people to change, right? And that's the next basic boot camp. And if you're already a practitioner and maybe you've gotten away from the skills, you haven't done it as much, life gets in the way, you're rebooting your life, rebooting your NLP, we have audits available, right? And you just call me about taking the audit, and it's, I usually charge like $175 to sit through all 4 days and do all the things that we're going to do in my boot camp, fly on the trapeze, break boards. Of course, you pay for your own dinner and go to the movies, but we do all of those things, but we have audits available, right, for those that do it, right? We may also have some limited scholarships if people want to do it, right? We also have the NGH Trainers Training coming up, the NLP NGH Trainers Training. That fee is $19.95, and that gives you a double whammy. You become a National Guild of Hypnotists certified instructor, as well as an NLP trainer, as long as you've gone through my first basic and master NLP, which will get you through that if you take this course if you haven't already, right? I'm going to give you my NLP home study course with it for the trainers training, which is basically a $900 value. Again, some coaching sessions, a free course, right? So that's the value of the NGH Trainers Training, the way I do it. And it's $19.95, and that goes through the National Guild of Hypnotists, right? If you want to be an NGH trainer. And so that is May 20th through the 24th down here in beautiful Venice, Florida. And so go here now to www.nfnlp.com. That's www.nfnlp.com because I want to do boot camps again. I'm really getting back into this, right? And without it, right, you're stuck in place. And maybe it's because life gets in the way. You had to get away from your practice or doing what you're doing. So you have that conscious, subconscious conflict, and maybe you don't have that ability to teach consciously and subconsciously, and you have no understanding of the theatrical model, especially for teaching NLP and hypnosis as a trainer. I'm also implementing this on how to use the theatrical model even in practice with people one-on-one, because it makes it more entertaining and useful, right? And so with the boot camp, people that come to the boot camps, you get great skills. you get a deeper understanding because you're immersed in it and you're doing other things and you see how people interact. You have access to top information because I'm always changing it. It makes you the best you, and you have subconscious conscious alignment. And of course, we do the breakthrough with things like the trapeze. We also do that in the basic. But fly on the trapeze, usually do board breaks. I have a wolf trap thing where you put your hand in a wolf trap. It's all about making you a better person, right? So what to do? Go to nfnlp.com, www.nfnlp.com, to secure your spot right now. Click the register now button, right? For NGH trade, if you want to be an NGH CI, you have to give me a call because we have to talk about that. There's certain little details we have to that. If you only want NLP Trainers Training, give me a call. We'll talk about that, right? And that phone number is 941-408-8551. Or you can email me at nfnlp@aol.com with questions. So that's the overall arcing thing that I wanted to get through today and talk about. And I'll be offering other webinars on some of the specifics on this, like the theatrical model, things like this. Let's say for the trainers training, one of the things that we'll be offering later on is I'll teach a 2 to 4 part webinar that'll be a paid webinar on the theatrical model. But if you've gone through the trainers training within the last year, you get that for free, because that'll be an ongoing thing on how to implement like the theatrical model into that. Working on with one of our people, he's going to be doing like magical presentations. He's a magician and a stage hypnotist, and he's going to be presenting a seminar or workshop. That actually probably be more of a workshop, but let's call it a boot camp when we do it, of but using magic in your presentations. And if you're a stage hypnotist, some really cool stuff on how to add that magic into it, magic and mentalism. So go to nfnlp.com to secure your spot, or in the next couple of days, give me a call. And if you have any questions about it, so we can get you booming and having some fun. So go ahead and do it right now. So I'd like to thank everybody for being a part of this call. And that's it. Thank you.